Okay, this is Josh Williams. I'm doing a video on how to refinish some oak veneered or laminate, whatever you want to call it, an old piece of furniture and kind of make it look new. Let me shut the door here to take the glare off of it. Alright, as you can see, I've about got all of it prepped. Couple things I didn't mention on the first video is I still got to get that. You know, see the difference between the finished, or not finished, between the scuffed and the shiny, the lacquered, and or polyurethane, varnish, catalyzed lacquer, whatever you want to call it, finished. So that's kind of what you want to look like right here. And all we did is just kind of knock the finish off, so it's not shiny, so the stain can grab hold and or soak in. I've said it before and I'll say it again, nothing wrong with this piece of furniture. It was perfectly fine. But if you wanted to want to kind of bring it up to date, give it a little bit of more, give it some more rich color, this is the way you do it. Now, something I didn't mention in the first video was, on this small of a piece, I usually use a piece of sandpaper and do it by hand. But if you're using a larger piece and or you just don't want to put the elbow grease, so to speak, into it, you can always use a mouth sander and or a palm sander, same type of grit, paper on it. The only thing you want to be careful about when you're using any kind of say electrical equipment like that is you really can't feel or gauge how deep you're getting into it. So if you do use that, just every 20-30 seconds to a minute, just stop and just kind of feel and see how deep that you're getting in to the wood, because you don't want to go too deep, and you still want to go with the grain if you're using power equipment, so to speak. Not really power, but anyway. So you've got everything scuffed up. Well, almost everything scuffed up. Let me kind of give you a little more detail on what I'm doing here. Moderate pressure, again with 150 grit paper, I believe. Nothing really heavy duty. I think it's 150. Let me check and make sure, because you don't want to go, no, it's 120. I'm sorry, 120 grit paper is what I'm using. You can use 150, but you don't want a very aggressive grit sandpaper just to knock the finish off. So you can see here, I'm going to do this little leg here. All we're doing, moderate pressure, is pretty much just toning the finish down and or knocking it down, so to speak. Not really pressing very hard, making even strokes with the grain of the wood, as not to dig into the wood too much. Just pretty much just kind of knock the finish off, the shininess off, for the stain to soak in. And I'm not finished with it completely, but up here I've got it pretty good. And you can see the dust. I'm doing this inside because it's not a lot of heavy dust in here. I've got a little drop cloth down, but anytime you're using any kind of power equipment and or a lot of sand in a big project, you probably won't do it in a garage and or outside because it may make a mess. But since this is small, we're making easy strokes. You don't have to get outside. Well, you can do it right here. You just want to keep your drop cloth down there. Okay. After you've got it knocked off to where it's going to be able to take stain and or paint, the next thing you want to do is you want to clean it up, of course. So usually what I'll do is take a vacuum cleaner with a brush attachment and basically just get the majority, I'd say 80% of the sanding residue, sanding dust off of the piece of furniture that you're working on. So bear with me just for a second. I'm going to do that. Okay, so you can see the finish is still there for the most part. Some areas are a little deeper, but we've achieved our first goal of just kind of dulling the finish down. Now this is almost ready to take any type of stain, whether it be water-based stain, oil-based stain, gel stain, paint, primer, you name it. Let me do a quick look over here. Yeah. Most of the time people really are afraid to do stuff like this because it's counterproductive in our brains to scratch, mess up something, but you've got to in order to refinish it, so to speak. So it's going to look pretty gnarly. It's going to look pretty gnarly during the process until we get to the finished piece. Okay, so we got it vacuumed. There's still quite a bit of dust. Now usually what I like to do now is take some type of solvent. You don't really want to use water because if it gets into the wood, you know, oil and water doesn't mix, of course, and it'll soak it up like a sponge. You don't want to do that because it's going to not let your stain penetrate, and it just takes a long time for it to evaporate. So usually what I like to do is get some type of solvent. A lot of people say mineral spirits. I don't like to use mineral spirits because mineral spirits tends to take a long time to dry. It tends to leave a residue. You want something that leaves no residue and evaporates quickly so you can get the job done quicker, so to speak. Now this you'll want to be very careful with. I'm going to use some brake parts cleaner, and I know somebody right now is saying brake parts cleaner, that's crazy. Well, no, it's really not. It evaporates quickly. It gets it done, and it doesn't soak into the wood, so you're not compromised your project. Let's see if I've left anything out. I don't like mineral spirits. I either use a lacquer thinner, denatured alcohol, rubbing alcohol will work, brake parts cleaner. If you do use stuff like that, you do want to be cautious if stuff like that bothers you, because it is caustic and it is you know, a chemical. So you want to wear gloves if you're afraid that it's going to get into your hands, because it will burn and or itch and or chemical burn you, so you don't want that. But I usually like to use brake parts cleaner and or lacquer thinner. So I'm going to use brake parts cleaner and some rubbing alcohol. Now, for this top part, I'm going to use just regular rubbing alcohol. Evaporates quickly, gets what you done clean. Okay, now I'm using just a cloth here. It's actually a microfiber, which doesn't have to be microfiber. It could be an old shirt, it could be underwear, it could be a terry cloth towel, whatever. But you just want to put it on pretty liberally. And then again, you know, you don't have to use a terry towel. But now what you're going to do is the remaining dust on there you want off. So you're going to take it off. And it's going to look new and beautiful again, but Wait. That's what we want. It's going to get all that dust, sanding debris off there. And it's going to evaporate really quickly so we can get to staining. And if you're wondering, I am from the South. I'm from East Tennessee. That's why I talk like a hillbilly. Okay. Okay, so far we've taken 120 grit paper, sandpaper, and dulled the finish, scuffed the finish, well, however you want to call it, whatever you want to call it. The reason in doing that is just to get the stain to penetrate into it, into the piece of furniture, and not to sit on top. So we're going to finish sanding everything else and wiping everything else down. And the next step in the video 3 will be the staining and or coloring, or whatever you want to call it. I did mention I did mention brake parts cleaner, and I used rubbing alcohol just to show you that you can use brake parts cleaner. I'm going to do that, but you just want to be careful because it is very, very, very gnarly stuff. But same goes for it as the rubbing alcohol. You want to liberally soak your terry towel and or cloth, whatever, and just wipe it down, get all the dust off of it. And the good thing about this brake parts cleaner and or rubbing alcohol and or lacquer thinner, denatured alcohol, it's going to dry really quick. So it cleans it, dries really quick, doesn't leave a residue like mineral spirits. Okay, I'm going to wipe down the rest of it, and then we'll get the staining. You can use tack cloth. Tack cloth is expensive. Tack cloth doesn't get all the dust, so I skip that step and just go from vacuuming it straight to wiping it off with some type of solvent. So you can see that's ready for stain. So tune back into the third video and we'll show you how to turn something cheap into something new, fresh, and beautiful. Thank you.